anytime we have a disagreement, the human nature in us wants to prove our point, right? Like we want to justify our perspective. Now, great leaders, what they do differently in conflict or in disagreement is asking for clarity. Can you explain to me how we got to this point?
Welcome to The Growth Project, a podcast brought to you by AMPLOS. Dr. Drew Brannon, joined today by Dr. Gabriela Caviedes, and we are going to talk about disagreement.
Yeah, disagreements and conflict, how you handle it, maybe how you should handle it versus how you currently handle it.
So if that doesn't sound exciting enough, please don't turn this episode off and go running away or anything. But seriously, I think this is such an important topic because everybody's going to disagree. Everybody is going to have a difference of opinion, a different perspective on how something should have happened or what should have been said or shouldn't have been said. It's an inevitable deal. However, maybe there's some irony in this. Even though we've all had disagreements with people plenty in the past, whether that's personal or professional, I find that people don't do this very well.
No.
Even though they've had practice.
Yeah. And one thing too, I think that most people don't fully understand is that not every disagreement has to turn into a conflict.
That's a great point. That is a great point. Why not?
Well, we're allowed to have our difference in opinions, right? It's navigating that with a degree of mutual respect and handling the conversations with maturity.
Yep. But you're making such a great point there because I'm not sure that people even have a mental category for the fact that we can have a difference of opinion on something and disagree about it and us not get an argument.
Right.
But you can 100% do that. And so, today we're going to be talking about a lot of things, touching on a lot of components of this, but that's certainly one outcome we would have for our listeners is, can you, at the conclusion of this podcast episode, have a better understanding of how you can disagree with people and it not end up in an argument?
Yeah. I mean, I would like to even shift the norm around the word disagreement. I think inherently we view it as something like negative, and
for sure,
there's a lot of emotion behind that in a primarily bad way, but shifting that into like, we can disagree and that be perfectly okay. Like taking the negativity away from that word. Because I think too often it is interchangeable with conflict.
It absolutely is. And so I think it's reframing internally what that word means to us.
Right.
But then I think the other part of it is, because I think in reality, Gabby, you and I would probably agree, we can reframe some of these to where they don't become arguments. Yeah. Some of them still will.
Right.
And so I think the other side of this is being able to recognize the purpose and the value of some of that. Like we've all had those situations with people where for whatever reason, we got into a disagreement followed by an argument. But then on the other side of all of that, it's like, okay, this built something that could be good in our relationship.
Right.
Like I saw a side of you, you saw a side of me, and now let's think about how we go forward in a productive way. Right. So we can also help people think about maybe seeing some purpose in this.
Yeah. What you're hitting on there is that healthy disagreement that creates growth in relationships, whether that be personally or professionally.
Okay. So let's get into breaking down a little bit of what we mean when we say disagreement. So Gabby, how do you know the difference between conflict compared to what we might call kind of healthy disagreement?
Yeah. Well, there's a few areas there to think about, right? The first being your intent behind the conversation. In conflict, the intent is usually to win, right?
Yes.
To drive your point home, and there is a lack of openness to anybody else's perspective or viewpoints. Whereas with disagreement, usually there's openness to understanding. The intent is to understand each perspective rather than drive yours home. Yep.
Yeah, and I think one little thing to interject there, that's a marker of emotional intelligence, I think, as well, is like on the disagreement side is, can you begin a conversation with a person disagreeing with their position and possibly be influenced by the time it's over? Like, can you change your mind?
Yeah.
And if you don't have a willingness to change your mind, that's a problem. Doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah.
But I think that's a marker of emotional intelligence, is you can go into these conversations and have a difference of opinion. And maybe even, who knows, by the end, you might see it differently.
Yeah.
You might not.
Yeah, that openness is the factor there when it comes down to intent. Now, the second thing that can indicate whether you're in conflict or just a healthy disagreement is the way that you're speaking, the tone.
Tone.
Are you yelling at each other? You're probably in conflict in a heated argument there, versus talking calmly, composed. That's a marker of healthy disagreement.
Amazing how much impact tone can have.
Oh, yeah.
Positively or negatively. And it's more than possible for a person to say something, whether it be a phrase or a sentence or a word, that really isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But if their tone is bad, it's a really big deal.
Absolutely.
It's a big problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got intent, tone, and what else?
And, outcome. This is, what you were speaking on really with that ability to have a shift in perspective by the end, right? The outcome of it is either in healthy disagreement, it's that ability to come to a mutual understanding, whether that's agreeing to disagree or shifting somebody's perspective. Versus conflict, the outcome is usually could be disdain for each other. It could be a lack of respect for the other person, and walking away from the conversation just feeling more angry or frustrated.
Because there's a really fine line between what you're saying, whether it becomes a conflictual type conversation versus just a healthy disagreement. Because there's such a fine line, and because it's hard to navigate all that, a lot of people will just avoid these.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
They'll just avoid them. And if and when people avoid getting anywhere near a conversation like this, where does that lead?
I mean, a lack of trust is built there. I can't trust that you're going to tell me when you disagree with me. And I also then, if I'm the person the person avoiding the conflict, I don't trust you to respond if I were to bring something up in a way that I can feel safe.
Yeah. So then whatever these issues might be are going to linger and they're going to hang around. And what do we know about people? Probably going to become internally resentful.
Yeah.
Next, we see some bitterness in the relationship. Obviously, this isn't leading anywhere positive or anywhere productive. And so when you look at a dynamic between, maybe it's two sets of people, maybe it's a department at a company to another department in a company. How do they get there when things have really gotten off the rails?
Yeah.
Sometimes the answer is they just avoid it.
It's the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, in the short term.
In the short term, yes. And until it all builds up and hits that tipping point.
Yes. And then it's not pretty.
No.
And then suddenly you're wishing you had not been avoiding these things because it's really bad at that moment.
Yeah.
So this whole idea of, okay, there's a fine line between healthy disagreement versus full-fledged conflict. You, as our listeners are kind of digesting this, you might have one of these right now where it's like, man, I'm avoiding, I'm passive, I'm just kind of sitting there doing nothing. Maybe whether it's conscious or unconscious, you're thinking it'll resolve itself. It rarely does. It usually does not resolve itself. So this can happen personally, it can happen professionally. Gabby, on the professional side, what are some of the benefits or some of the purposes that we see in healthy disagreement?
Well, I mean, when you think about going back to healthy disagreements promoting openness, one of the benefits we see is innovation, right? Like increased innovation where people are open to hearing, potentially new solutions or pathways of navigating challenges within an organization or within their relationships. So the innovation piece becomes very present. And then the second half of that is better decision making, right? Like if we're able to disagree in a productive manner, we can now get to a point of deciding what the best foot forward is. Oftentimes in conflict, you get stuck and you can't move forward because you can't find anywhere to agree on.
Yeah. Decisions need to be pressure tested.
Right.
That's the bottom line. I think when they aren't, when there's no pressure testing, when there's no one really sitting there and looking at and thinking about not just, is this the right decision, but why? And where's the evidence or the rationale, whatever it might be, that is indicating we should do this versus that, man, that can be costly.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you, one of the biggest ROIs on healthy disagreement is we make better decisions.
Yeah. And to what you're hitting on there is that accountability piece too, right? Like if we're going to disagree on something, let's hold each other accountable to being able to justify that and provide some degree of rationale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we see it on the professional side, equally true on the personal side.
Oh, yeah.
And so we mentioned earlier, like what's one of the big values and benefits of when we have healthy disagreement? It helps build some trust in the relationship. I know more about you. I see that you're willing to have a different opinion than me.
Right.
So it feels genuine. It feels authentic in the sense of it's not just us having kind of this like falsely comfortable relationship and a friendship or something like that. That's a real problem long term. What are some of the other payoffs we see on the personal side?
Well, I think the tension in relationships can be decreased by engaging in healthy disagreement. However, there can also be the increases in that tension initially. One thing I always think about with this and caution on is the statement of, and I said it earlier, but agreeing to disagree. Sometimes I think that can be used as an out, right? Like that's avoiding the conflict.
That means I'm ready to be done.
Yeah, the door is closed. And I know for me that shows up a lot more so in the personal relevance than the professional. Because I think in the professional setting, you have to come to some sort of agreement to, make a business decision when it comes to what we're wanting to have for dinner. I can just say, let's agree to disagree, and here's what we're cooking tonight.
Yeah. By the way, here's
get
what
on
we're
board
having.
or don't eat,
But this is, and that is so true. And I think the other thing that's important to mention here is whether it's professional, whether it's personal, a very common thing that you'll hear people say in these, whether it's a healthy disagreement or certainly in a conflict type discussion, at some point in that conversation, it's really normal for someone to say, how long have you felt this way? And way too commonly, what is the answer?
A long time.
A long time. Okay.
Yeah.
Like whether that's measured in months or years or whatever. And I've seen this happen too many times where people are trying to have a healthy, productive conversation and it's going like reasonably well. And then the moment someone finds out the answer to that question and the answer is a really long time, it all goes sideways.
Why didn't you bring this up sooner?
Yeah. Like, why didn't you tell me? How could you continue to do this? And then it kind of like, I didn't think I could.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, now it just got worse.
Now we're just ping-ponging back and forth.
And now this whole thing is just way off the rails. It's bad on all these different levels. So again, just another reminder of the importance of you must be willing to have these kind of conversations. Yeah. And they don't have to end badly.
Yeah. They don't have to end badly. And to your point, the timing of them, I don't think disagreements are ever going to be timed perfectly, and being, again, open to the timing is not going to be right, and you've just got to have these hard conversations sometimes. Yeah,
before they're too far off the rails.
Before they're too far gone.
All right, well then that's a perfect segue into, let's talk about how can you do that well. So if I'm going to sit down with someone and I'm going to have the courage and take the initiative to talk about something we don't agree on, what should I be keeping in mind?
Well, the first thing, we talk about this all the time when we speak to groups and individuals about delivering feedback, right? It's focus on the problem, not the person, right? And being able to separate the two is really important, because the moment I come to you and attack your character or attack you as a human being, like you're going to go on defensive mode.
Yeah.
But if I say, here's the problem, you aren't the problem, but maybe the way you behaved in this situation was a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's changeable.
There's a huge difference between me saying, it didn't seem like you were very well prepared for the meeting today. Yeah. Can we talk about that? Versus, you're lazy.
Right. Yeah.
Like those are going to land in very...
You're lazy and unprepared.
Yeah. That's going to land in two very different ways. Mm-hmm. Now, is it possible that person is lazy? They might be.
Maybe. Yeah.
They very well could be. Is that going to be helpful at all? No. Is that going to immediately put them on the defensive? Yes. Mm-hmm. Is there a very reasonable likelihood at all we're going to have a productive conversation? Almost zero.
Yeah, not at all.
So what I have found over time is when people instead take the shortcut to you are lazy, that is more about their inability to manage their own internal frustration.
Yeah.
You're frustrated.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a valid reason to be frustrated. We've all been frustrated. That's completely fine. But you've got to instead focus on what is the most functional approach I can take to this conversation, which, as you said, is about the problem, not the person.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you put it perfectly. And it does become really hard to do that when your emotions are heightened. And we'll get to in a moment one of the other core principles, but the ability to be able to focus on the problem, not the person, is really at the core of this.
And look, one more final footnote on that that I want to interject is I can remember a situation I was in years ago where there was a leader of a team and he was really, really frustrated about the fact that he had this person on his team who was lazy in a recurring and chronic way. Mm. And we had to have a hard conversation. You know why?
Yeah.
Whose fault was that? The leaders.
The leaders for allowing it. Yeah.
It's his fault.
Yeah.
And he had allowed this person to hang around for way too long, despite the fact that this person was lazy, and they continue to have all this conflict. I'm like, look, this is your fault.
Right.
Because you have the ability to change the dynamic and you aren't doing it. Mm-hmm. That wasn't a fun conversation either.
I bet not.
Okay. So I agree with that wholeheartedly. Number one, we must separate the person from the problem. Otherwise, we're going to hit a wall. Mm-hmm. The second one to touch on here is, and this is tough. Can you find a way to lead with curiosity, not just frustration or defensiveness? Mm. So how in the world does somebody do that, Gabby?
Well, the challenge here is, like you said, I mean, how do you do this? It comes down to being able to ask questions when you want to attack, right? Yep. Anytime we have a disagreement, the human nature in us wants to prove our point, right? Like we want to justify our perspective. Now, great leaders, what they do differently in conflict or in disagreement is asking for clarity. Can you explain to me how we got to this point? Mm-hmm. A lot of this comes down to avoiding the whys as well. Like, why did you do that?
Yeah, that's not a great word.
That's a little accusatory. Puts people on the defense more so than how did we get here? Or can you explain this to me? Walk me through your thought process here.
Yeah. Yep. And leaders, if you're hearing this and you're thinking, I don't always have time to do that. My feedback to you would be, you really don't have time not to do that. Mm. And here's one of the reasons why. There are plenty of reasons. Here's one of them. If you skip that part and instead of having genuine curiosity and asking questions like you're describing and genuinely trying to get to or develop an understanding of what's happening here, if you skip that and instead you go straight to the accusation type stuff, there is a 100% chance you're going to end up in a place, maybe it's not this specific example, but over time where you're really embarrassed. Mm. And you're going to be embarrassed because there was something big you missed and you didn't know it until it was too late. Yeah. And you're going to feel awful. Embarrassed, guilty. Yeah. You're going to feel absolutely terrible about yourself. Mm-hmm. And honestly, you should.
Yeah.
Because you didn't do a very good job of trying to go about how you really get to the root of something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we're talking a lot about the questions that you ask the other person you're disagreeing with, but there's also questions you should be asking yourself when you're going to disagreements is, well, what am I missing? Right? Like,
what am I missing? Why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
How did I get here? Mm-hmm. How confident am I that I'm right? Mm-hmm. What are the reasons why I think I'm right? Mm-hmm. There's a million things you could ask yourself.
Yeah.
All right. So just by way of review here, separate the person from the problem, number one. Number two, lead with curiosity.
Yeah.
What's next, Gabby?
Number 3 goes back to what we've been talking about kind of behind these other two, which is regulating emotions before responding.
I'm going to let you break that one down.
Well, it was funny when we were getting ready for this podcast, that one caught your eye and you're like, wow, that's easier said than done, I think.
Yeah. Yes, correct. Why is it so difficult? Like, why did that catch my eye? Why is it so hard?
Yeah.
Because the fact is, you will get into some of these and be right. Mm-hmm. And guess what? You still need to regulate your emotions. Yeah. Like, there will be a moment or a situation where there are differing opinions on the table. Mm-hmm. You are objectively correct, and plenty of other people would validate that. Yeah. And yet the person across from you has planted their flag in the ground, and he or she is not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. How do you stay composed?
You know, this goes back to all of the basic emotion regulation strategies, right? Like the grounding, the breath work, like all of these basic core emotion regulation strategies that you can use in the moment to help yourself get back down from an upregulated state. And it's, again, easier said than done here, but even something as simple as, you know, taking a pause and taking a deep breath when you're feeling yourself get frustrated. And we're talking about regulating your emotions, but in order to do that, you have to have a degree of emotional awareness.
Yeah.
Understand, and one thing we have here is, like, when you are getting to that heightened emotional state, either you or you sense it from the other party, like, take a pause.
Right.
It's okay to revisit the conversation, let emotions die down a second, and come back. Oftentimes that is helpful in nature.
Yep.
Not always possible, but when possible, being able to separate for a second and come back.
Mm-hmm. I think that's all spot on. And then I think what I would add to that is, this is going to sound maybe a little crazy to some folks who don't see it this way, but I'm going to focus on leaders here for just a moment, but it'd be equally true for anybody. When you go into a conversation such as this, I think your truest goal should be to handle the conversation consistent with what you believe the right way is, and less about whether in the end you win or lose. And so I think you have to go into this thinking the right way of, like, how do I increase the likelihood that I regulate my emotions well? I go into it with the right mentality around, look, it's not about walking out of this room and someone saying, you know what? And now that I've had the time to talk to you and think about it, I actually think you're right and I'm wrong. It can't be about that.
Right.
It's got to be more about, can you walk in with the objective of, I'm going to handle myself in a way that I can be proud of in the end. Yeah. And just see where this goes. Yeah. I think that's the goal.
I'm not going to allow myself to get triggered or to raise my voice, or, you know, however you don't want to show up. Like, have a clear idea of that. Like, know how you want to show up.
100%. And then, you know, here's something that I hear a bunch too, and I've heard over the years that's really bothersome and kind of ironic, is I'll hear people say, well, I do that pretty well, like in a work environment, but not so much on the personal side. Yeah. Okay, well, do I think it's a good idea or a smart move while in a work environment to lose control of your emotions? Well, of course I don't think that. Right. But if you're going to get it right with anybody, no disrespect to anyone's coworkers, wouldn't you want to get it right with your family?
Yeah, you would think so. But, you know, we say it all the time. Those closest to us usually get the worst of us.
Yeah, they commonly do. And I think it's unfortunate. And I get it. Like, the fact is, you can blow up on your teenager, unfortunately, and then get up the next morning and you still have a place to parent, and you do that in the wrong person in the wrong work environment, and that might go differently. So I understand all of that, but I do think it's important that people are willing to kind of take a step back and be like, man, if I'm going to get this right anywhere, I want it to be in my personal life.
Yeah. And if you can get it right there, then you can get it right. If you can get it right with the people who know you at your core, know your triggers, know how to push your buttons, then you should be able to get it right with anyone else.
Right. And to be clear, when we say get it right, what we mean is as consistently as possible, not in a perfection type way.
Correct. So let's talk about the final one here. And, I think you kind of teed us up nicely for it, which is go into the disagreement focused on shared outcomes, not winning.
If only people could do that with a little more consistency. So in other words, what's the common ground? What can we agree on? How can we create a step forward, a path forward from here where we are aligned?
Yeah. The alignment and just remembering we are on the same team. We share the same goals. We want the same things.
Yeah.
We're just disagreeing on the best way of getting there.
Yep.
We're disagreeing on the process.
Yep. And one of the best ways to do that, although it's tough, is can you make what are called kind of like micro agreements where hey, maybe you don't agree that this should be our annual sales goal.
Right.
Maybe you think that is too far-fetched and it's not a thing. Okay. Maybe that's how you feel and this is how I feel. Can we agree on our strategy for the next quarter and just go get busy?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Right. Because if you get too caught up on that outcome, right? Of we're disagreeing on what the sales target is, then you're never going to make progress at all, right? Yep. So there's, you've got to be able to have some humility and say, okay, can we at least agree on the strategy so we can get to work?
Yep. Maybe you don't think there should be a leadership retreat in 2027, and I do. Can we just go have a great May?
Right. Yeah.
And just focus on what it's going to take to make that a reality. That's the point is I think if we're having a hard time getting traction in some way, shape, or form, how do we go find a space that we are in agreement, align on that, work hard collaboratively on that? That's often a better way to go about it versus trying to win.
Okay. So we've talked about these core principles of navigating disagreements, how you can go about it. But, what makes this so hard, and especially in the professional world, as a lot of our listeners are in that setting, what makes this fine line between conflict and healthy disagreement so challenging?
I think in a professional setting, part of what goes on there is power dynamics and hierarchies, which exist in all organizations and need to exist.
Right. There's
got to be structure and clarity and understanding about kind of who fits where in the organization. But the fact of that sometimes means if you are lower down the chain in the organizational structure, you aren't always going to get to make certain decisions you would like to make. It's not going to happen. And embedded in that is the fact that there will be people further up the chain in the organizational structure who are deciding things you don't agree with. And there's not a lot you can do about that. So what makes it so hard is, I'm asked to then continue to show up day in and day out and do a great job despite the fact I don't agree with A, B, and C. Yeah. That's hard.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to stay there, and that's up to the person who's in that situation, but it's also not that simple of you can, on the one hand, you can say, well, you don't have to stay here. That doesn't necessarily mean that they can just snap their fingers and have another opportunity.
Right.
But yeah, what makes it hard is the fact you sometimes have to continue to day in and day out do your thing despite disagreement.
Yeah. And the negative consequences piece can be a portion of that too. If I do disagree with my boss or somebody higher up on that hierarchy, am I going to get fired? Am I going to get demoted? There's the fear of consequences that make these conversations challenging. And that's more so on the side of leaning towards avoidance because you fear that.
Yep. Yeah. So then you have a choice to make, right?
Right.
You got, and neither one of those doors is too appealing.
Yeah.
Door number one, wade into the potential conflict. Door number two, live with it. Though neither one of those are very fun.
I think another piece of this that we haven't really touched on yet is mode of communication. Handling disagreements via Teams or text message versus in person, right? Like there's that degree of tonality and body language, all of the nonverbals are stripped away. So the way that you're communicating in a disagreement virtually can be more challenging than in person. Sometimes in person is more challenging depending on the person. So it varies here too.
Yeah, very true. But a lot is lost, and that's a whole nother podcast episode. Yeah. But because of the distributed workforce scenario that we have, and that's not going away. But man, it is just so easy to miss out on some really important things on a Teams call.
Absolutely.
I mean, sorry, Microsoft. It just is. And it's not because Teams isn't a cool product and all that, but there's a lot you can miss. And that even for those of us that work in the field of psychology, it's easy to miss things.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, Gabby, let's also touch on what are some strategies, practically speaking, that a person should be thinking about as they're navigating this? So give us some concrete feedback there.
I said previously that it's never going to be the perfect time, but finding the right time.
There is such thing as the wrong time.
There is such thing as the wrong time. Finding the right time to have these conversations, to engage in disagreements.
Yes.
And not only the right time, but the right place.
Yeah. In most work environments, Monday morning, I wouldn't recommend that.
No.
There's a lot going on. I know in the world of AMPLOS, there's a lot going on Monday morning. So think about right time, right place. And I think also, have a mechanism in place that's a more proactive feedback type mechanism that give you a chance to not get off track on these things. Yep. Going back to what we talked about earlier of how normal it is for someone to say, how long have you felt this way? And the answer is a really long time. Yeah. Put some mechanisms in place to give you a chance to avoid that.
Yeah. Allowing space for opinions to be spoken about, I think is what you're hitting on there regularly.
Yes.
And encouraging that respectful debate among your team. Right? Like, I'm open to hearing your opinions. I might not agree with you, but please voice it.
That's right. All right. So I know we're going to be wrapping up here in a couple minutes, but let's be sure we finish and get into how do you know when things have become a real problem? Meaning, what are the warning signs that this is not healthy disagreement, this is conflict?
The first sign that I always see is body language shifts. And this goes into, the overarching theme of defensiveness. Like the moment somebody starts to close off their body, across their arms, or maybe it's kind of shifting towards getting in your face, depending on, the personality traits here. Body language is really that key indicator of defensiveness starting to come about. Could also be the tone of voice, right?
Yep.
But defensiveness is that first warning sign.
And I think what I would add to that is just chronic examples of just being difficult. Just silly, petty things that aren't even issues. People are making issues out of them and having a gripe about things that aren't even worth us talking about. And it's all because there's this it's about what's underlying. Yeah. That's the issue.
I came to you with problem A and because I came to you about a problem, now you're coming at me with, problem lowercase a and lowercase b that don't really matter.
Right.
But it's, because somebody's raising a concern to you, you feel the need to throw something back.
Right. And I think in some of these, it's more than possible for these two relationships to get, if we're talking about two people, so far out of whack that it is literally impossible for one of those people to be successful.
Yeah.
They can't have a good idea. Yeah. They can't have the right approach to solving a problem. It's just, they're not going to allow it to happen. They're going to disagree because there's so much resentment there.
Right. Yeah. And that's when, the personal attacks come into play. And that's how you really know when you're in conflict and no longer in healthy disagreement is the personal attacks, like when it's attacks on character or, just saying things that you don't really mean, using the words like never, will never agree, like those kind of definitive words are indicators of that as well.
Okay, so and this will be an example of that maybe we can kind of finish with here. I want to just mention something that I remember a couple of years ago. I was doing some work with a company, and they were trying to get their minds around the notion of the language, a strong leader. They're like, we don't have enough strong leaders in this company. And the more I kind of listened to what they were describing, I realized that what they were describing is more of what I would call kind of like a volatile leader, not a strong leader. And the issue was what they were describing was a person who was going to be kind of loud and reactionary and very bold. And I'm not saying that all those things are bad. Like I do think there are times where being bold is a good thing. But if you want to get back to that word strong, what it really means to have strength is to be able to handle yourself well.
Control.
And to have composure and to not be thrown off by things that pop up in your day or your week or your month, and to handle all these things with emotional maturity. That's what strength is. Not,
brute force.
Not like, I'm going to come into the room in the presence of a meeting and kind of like push my way around to get what I want. That's not a strong leader.
Right.
And it's also not a strong leader when he or she, as like maybe tension rises or there's some kind of problematic thing going on, really kind of doubles down on, a dictator, like a strong, like that's not strength.
No.
So I think it's important for our listeners to understand, really, when you look at the literature on emotional intelligence and competencies in leadership and all that, that's what we mean or should mean when we say strong leader.
Yeah.
Okay. Final thoughts?
I think, encouraging our listeners to, move into some application of this in their lives. And the first phase of that, we always say, is raising your own awareness, reflecting a little bit. So starting to think about, where do you tend to avoid disagreements? How do you typically react when you're challenged or when you're frustrated in a conversation? And then what patterns tend to show up for you in conflict? Yeah,
right on. And I bet you've got one of these somewhere right now. Like to all of our listeners, I bet you there's at least one example of maybe something that hasn't yet been addressed or talked about that's just there. Really would encourage you to be honest with yourself and others about what that is and take action. Okay. Well, as always, very grateful to our listeners here on the Growth Project, and we appreciate you spending time with us and giving us an opportunity to kind of throw some resources at you for you to think about and consider. And we look forward to the next opportunity we have to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.